Hello, welcome to Irish Football Fan TV. It's the opposition preview. It's our first one of 2022. We have our Centenary game against Belgium tomorrow at the Aviva Stadium at 5 p.m. And Scott Coyne from the Belgian Football Podcast is joining me this morning. How are you, Scott?
I'm good, Paul. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on. I know you're a busy man, but I suppose just we always kind of get an idea of how these podcasts and stuff start. Obviously, you're not Belgian, so it's a good insight to kind of how did the Belgian Football Podcast start and how is everything going with it?
Well, the BFP's about to go into its third year. I got involved actually by accident. I've always had an interest in sort of Belgian culture and been lucky enough to do some travelling there. So I've always had an affinity with the country and the culture. And obviously, I love my football. And I happened by accident, funnily enough, to meet the founder of the BFP, Mr. Ben Jackson, who's Brighton based. Very soon after he started the BFP, and I said, well, got in touch with him, and because I thought what he was doing was great, because there was no in-depth, regular coverage of what was happening in Belgian football in English. So there was kind of a gap there for coverage, because of the amount of interest. So Ben started the Belgian Football Podcast as an offshoot from some of the tactical analysis writing he was doing, and kind of very, very quickly said to me, would you be interested in getting involved? And initially I thought he meant as a guest, to kind of share my own interest and love of Belgian football, but he meant no. Do you want to come aboard and build this? And over the last kind of 2 and a bit years, we've seen huge growth, because there's massive interest in the Belgian league, particularly in English speaking language countries. And football lovers will know that it's a fantastic league for players to develop in, and you see a lot of talent coming through Belgium before they might appear in one of the major 5 leagues. There's 3 of us at the BFP. There's myself, there's Ben, who's our regular weekly host, and there's our Joris, who is the actual Belgian flavour. Joris is Belgian. He is living and working in Hamburg at the moment, and he's a Genk fan.
Okay. Well, you just mentioned there about players being developed. We actually have our own player, Josh Cullen, playing in the Belgian league as well with Anderlecht, and he's played, I think, every game for Anderlecht this season. And his development since he's been there under Vincent Kompany has been unbelievable, to be fair. There's so many good young Belgian players coming through, and I know, look, we're going to touch on the squad now in a few minutes, but a lot of those players coming through, the younger players coming through, we might not have seen some of them, but I believe some of them are future stars. And Stephen Kenny even has highlighted a few of them as well. And Doku up front as a future star. And we know you've produced good players in the past. I mean, this golden generation that you've produced is just full of world class talent. And then even at that, you've got players like Torgan Hazard, and you have your Yuri Tielemans, who are probably going to be the stars of this kind of this window, but they wouldn't normally be, because you usually have your Kevin De Bruyne's, and you usually have Lukaku, Eden Hazard. I know things haven't gone to plan for him at Real Madrid and stuff like that, but some of the players, like, we would only dream to have at least one of them in our squad, and we'd be absolutely buzzing. Kind of similar to Wales last night with Gareth Bale. If we had one player who was kind of that outstanding ability, we'd be certainly relying on them. But yeah, I suppose you've seen a lot of. I imagine you would have seen a lot of Josh then this season.
Yeah. He's been doing very, very well. He's developing really nicely there, and I think he's well trusted by Anderlecht and Vincent Kompany. And as you were saying, he's played every game. In fact, I think he's only missed something like 16 minutes of possible game time. And that's because he was substituted towards the end of a game. But he finishes most games as a regular starter now. And I know they're looking at a new deal there. They've been talking to him for a while, and they're very keen to hold on to him. And he's developed a really nice relationship with Olsen in the Anderlecht midfield as well, and I think he's doing very well there.
Yeah, well, I suppose from we always get the lads on and talk about kind of Belgium. So from your point of view, are Belgium just kind of looking at this as, like, it doesn't seem like their players were that keen on coming over? What was the reason behind that? Was that just a case of it's coming into the business end of the season and they don't really want to have any players injured? for the clubs, or what way was it? Because it just seemed a bit odd that so many of the bigger names just don't seem to be coming over for this.
Well, some people might not be aware, but it's been a kind of not an open secret, but it's been common knowledge for a number of weeks now that this squad was only going to consist of players who had 50 caps or less. That was a deliberate thing, and really it was for two reasons. Roberto was wanting to give some of the senior players a rest. Ahead of obviously a new Nations League campaign coming up, and there's some rather tasty fixtures for the Red Devils in there. Obviously, they open against the Netherlands in June, which is quite an exciting fixture. And then obviously there's the big one at the end of the year in Qatar to look forward to. But the intention, for tomorrow's game and for Tuesday's game in Brussels against Burkina Faso was always just to call up players with 50 caps or less. And it was really a chance for Roberto to have one last look at some players who might still have a chance of an outside place of getting into that World Cup squad, because there's not really a great deal of opportunity left for anybody who might be around the fringes to kind of get a place kind of coming up. The defence needs freshened up slightly. Obviously, that I think, as everyone knows, that's probably the weakest part of the side. There have been calls for two or three players to kind of come into the squad now. And one of them actually is in the squad for the next few days, Arthur Tiate, who's at Bologna at the moment. He's a quite exciting young and up-and-coming centre-back. He's in the squad, as is Steve van der Eyden from Union Saint-Gilloise, who are top of the table at the moment in Belgium. He's actually in the squad more because Zeno van Housden, another centre half, who probably is going to be one of the regulars in the future. He's injured at the moment, and Sieb's been playing quite well, so he's delighted to have got that call up, I think. And he's probably the only really surprise in the squad, actually. When I look at the squad, which I've got in front of me, I think most people will know a lot of the names there. There's a couple that people might not have heard of. Dante Van Zier, who's making a bit of a name for himself at the moment in Belgium and outside Belgium because of what he's doing with Union Saint-Gilloise at the top of the table. He's got 13 goals and 28 at the moment. Sieb van der Heyden. Yeah, I was talking about Dante Van Zier, having 13 goals and 28 for Union Saint-Gilloise. He's having a great season. Some people might have heard of him. He's one for the future as well, certainly if he can keep up his form. But there's a lot of players in this squad who people will know and probably who will go to the World Cup with Belgium. Sambi Lokonga, who's obviously at Arsenal, Hans van Aken at Club Brugge, Jeremy Doku at Rennes, massive talent. He's definitely going to become a mainstay of the future. Jari Verskaren as well, another name that people might know. So there's 3 or 4 names in there that might be unheard of to people, but generally speaking, even though this is not the squad that people would have expected, it's still a really strong squad, I think.
Yeah, so I don't know them names, but obviously you cover Belgian football extensively, and if I was to go through some of the players that Ireland probably called up, you probably wouldn't know some of them, but probably just down to the fact that they play lower leagues in England. I mean, from our point of view, we've lost a couple of goalkeepers, but other than that, we aren't Adam Ida has been injured through. He got a bad knock with Norwich, so he's out for the rest of the season. Enda Stevens is out. So we don't really have we're not as blessed as you in terms of our squad where we can go, okay, we're going to bring him in. Stephen Kenny has experimented by bringing in lots of different players, and we were riddled with COVID last year as well, so he was forced to bring in players as well. So we've seen so many players coming in over, I suppose, the last 18 months that this squad is probably totally different to what it was 18 months ago when Mick McCarthy was manager, and then obviously all the COVID stuff happened. So we have our squad's completely new. It's young, it's fresh. We're playing good football. We had a lot of bad results coming into, I suppose, the last campaign, and didn't start the campaign quite well, but we finished it quite well. We finished it with some wins, and we just looked like a team that are have a bit of momentum and a bit of boost in morale because the mood was so low for so long. But with us now, it seems as though the fans and the team have that connection back. And when the fans and the team have that connection, I think it's a very powerful unit together, because the Aviva can be a very intimidating place when our fans are on how do I say, I was going to say on song, and with the players then as well, it seems to give the players that extra boost and that extra confidence. I mean, you look at Wales last night, their fans seem to give their players a real push, and they got the win over the line. But that's kind of like the way when the fans and the team are going well together, there's not many better mixtures than you can get than that. But just from a Belgian point of view, I have you any worries from about us? Like, is there anyone that you'd be going, oh, he's a threat? Or it's just interesting to see from a Belgian point of view.
I think the interesting thing for this game from the Belgian perspective is that this is actually quite a good game, in terms of the level of opposition. I mean, the main thing from the Belgian perspective will be a chance for Roberto to look at some of these players in this kind of environment. You were talking about the Aviva, and I think an opposition who are technically good, who I think the Republic are, I think they're at a good level. I think there are some players coming through there who, can cause this side problems. And I think it's the sort of game where, you're going to a big stadium, and I think there'll be a good crowd there. I think it's an opportunity for these players to not switch off. Quite often when players go away in international duty to fixtures like this, they go into autopilot a little bit, particularly when there's nothing to kind of play for. I don't think they can really do that here, partially because it's so close to both a new Nations League campaign and obviously there's a World Cup coming up, which will be upon us before we know it. So I do think the Red Devils are going to have to be on their toes during the next few days, because it's kind of the last opportunity for some of these players to really say, I should be going to that tournament, I should be going to Qatar. So I think it'll be taken very seriously by them. I would expect most players in the squad to get some game time. Wouldn't surprise me if we saw almost a complete change in the second half again, just to have a look at everybody. The system, Roberto's system, doesn't tend to change. So when there is a change, it's usually a personnel change, rather than a system change. So in a way that helps with a fixture like this as well, to see how kind of people fit into that. And how they respond to it, but I think this is quite an exciting fixture, and we've had a bit of interest in it from some Irish friends who will be at the game, I think.
Yeah, well, you say there, I imagine that formation is 4-3-3, Roberto Martinez.
Well, he prefers a 3-4-3. Where possible, but sometimes he'll tweak it slightly and effectively play a 3-4-2-1, and that's really just that's minor tweaking that comes down to Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how he sets up initially, to see if effectively if it's man for man, which I doubt that it will be. The real thing to look at, I think, from a Belgian perspective, for me certainly, is who he starts with in defence, because that's the part of the side that needs the most work, and I think the one that everybody from a Belgian perspective is probably looking at, because it's the one which we might see the most changes in. Obviously, Thomas Vermaalen's retired since the Euros as well. Vertonghen obviously isn't there because he has over 50 caps, as I was saying. So this is an opportunity for some players who wouldn't necessarily get a game to get some game time. I mean, when you look at the selection, they are the only two names that people might know instinctively are Diedrich Boyata and Jason Denayer. The others, Bornau, Teata and Van der Eyden, are names that people might not necessarily know. So it'll be interesting to see if they get some game time. And I would hope and expect that Arthur Teate would get a reasonable amount of game time over the next few days, because he's definitely one of two players defensively who I think a lot of people see as, the future of the Belgian defence.
Yeah, well, just because you're saying there, obviously, about players have to come in here and impress. So, in my opinion, Ireland should be wary of that, because there's players there that are going to be looking to come in. Ireland aren't really playing for anything other than a centenary game just to celebrate
Mhm.
100 years. But other than that, there's not much there that Ireland are playing for other than, a good showcase in front of the fans, and a good chance maybe to have a look at some players. Like we've got Conor Ronan coming in there, who's having a good season with St. Mirren, much like Jamie McGrath did last year. When Jamie McGrath came in, he done really well against Portugal, and looked like a player that Stephen Kenny was going to keep around the squad. He got a move to Wigan, hasn't really worked out for him, hasn't really played that much so far, but it could be an opportunity for someone like Conor Ronan to come in and see how he gets on, because he was fantastic for the under-21s, but he needs to get himself in the team now and see how he gets on. But as far as Stephen Kenny always throws a bit of a spanner in the works. You don't know who he'll go with, like up front. And look at our strikers, and he could well start with Troy Parrott up front, and have maybe Chidozie Ogbeni and someone like that either side of him as well. So Stephen Kenny, you can't really read him in terms of that. Like he could set up defensively or he could set up offensively and really go at it. You don't really know. But in fairness, since the Serbia game, the second one, we've really stepped up. Gavin Bazuna came in. He came in for the Luxembourg game, which we got beaten. But ever since then, I think that was, we needed a reaction, and we got reactions from there. And we'll just, I suppose, be looking to keep that good nature we have now with the fans, and just trying to keep that good run going. I think if we got a draw or a win, Stephen Kenny would be delighted. I don't think yous would be that disheartened even if he's lost, because purely you're coming here with a makeshift squad to. It's basically, it's going to be a fairly even game, even though it's like your B or C team. To be honest with you, it is. But like our strongest area of the pitch is obviously defence, and your weakest area of your squad in this squad anyway is defence. So that'll be interesting to see, can you break us down and can we break you down.
Yeah, I think it's a good game for Ireland. I think this because it's a good level of opposition. Obviously, Belgium's still the number one side in the world as well. So, as I was saying, there should be a really healthy crowd at the Aviva, and this is a good level technically of opposition as well. So it should push the Irish squad, regardless of who Stephen Kenny starts with. So I think particularly from an Irish perspective, I think this is quite a good game to kind of play at this point, even though there's nothing at stake, because there's plenty to motivate players. And plenty of quality opposition on show as well. So, it's much more attractive than a game like this normally would be with nothing at stake, I think.
Yeah, I suppose that's it. Well, normally what I do, Scott, is when I'm finishing up, I get a score prediction. Now it's your own score, so don't worry if you feel like you're gonna hammer us. Go ahead and say it. It's heart overhead.
I think this might finish in a draw. I can see something like 2 each.
Oh, 2 each. I don't see a score 2. I could see a score 1-1 I could see. I'm gonna say 1-1, and then maybe later on when we do our own preview, I might say 1-0. But yeah, that's I just, as I said, you usually have a good attack there, good midfield. I think the game would be won and lost, but possibly in midfield as well. But I feel as though it'll be interesting when we see the starting lineup. That's what I think. I think Caoimhín Kelleher will start in goal. He just won the Carabao Cup with Liverpool, but a bit like Origi for you guys. It's one of those where when he comes in, he does a decent job, but still has to establish himself fully. Regards the defence, I'm not really bothered about defence. I know that they'll be decent. I know our wing backs will be decent, and then it's, I suppose, just about the midfield and who he starts with up front. Before I can be confident in saying that we'll get a win, but we'll see later on. The press conference is at 11, so I'm going to be shooting off to that very, very shortly. So Scott, I just want to say a huge thanks to yourself, and you mentioned that you were a consultancy as well. I don't know if you mentioned it on the show, so if you want to feel free and plug that, and obviously the Belgian Football Podcast where people can find it and so on, so they can give you a follow and stay up to date then.
Yeah, sure. It's been great to join you, Paul. The Belgian Football Podcast produce a weekly show which covers all the news across Belgian football, and you can find us at Belgian Podcast, and you can find me and the other guys at the BFP there on our bios as well. And I've also got my own independent freelance Belgian football consultancy where I do work for players and agents and clubs as well, and you can find me there at Coin Consultancy.
Happy days. So go and check them out. If you like the video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well if you're new or you're just coming back as well. Please subscribe. It helps the channel grow. And yeah, give the lads a follow as well because they do Trojan work for Belgian football, even though they're not from there. And Scott's a Celtic fan as well. So most people on this channel who are Irish will be Celtic fans as well. A former season ticket holder as well. So a good guy. But yeah, thanks very much for joining me, Scott, and I'm sure I'll catch you again. Thank you very much.